So today I want to go over how you'll be able to make a massive amount of gold with patch 10.1.5 of World of Warcraft. And this patch is going to be released on July 11th, and you can do this method before the patch is released, build up these materials we're going to be farming, and be able to just make tons of gold selling them once the patch hits. And this method is going to be revolving around some new content coming to Naxxramas, just like it came to Zul'Gurub in patch 10.0.7, in where they're essentially going to be adding in some new currency, some new objectives, and some new vendors to be able to obtain previously unobtainable cosmetics. And how this is going to work is after you complete some objectives, you'll be able to start obtaining some new items within the raid from bosses and enemies, and then you'll be able to take those new items and exchange them for removed recipes from a new vendor that'll also be in the raid. And this won't only just be for these recipes, there'll also be some mounts and some other items you'll be able to earn, but since we're going over how to make gold off of this, we're primarily interested in what these recipes are going to take to craft these items. And there's going to be a ton of different recipes for multiple different professions, though when you go into them, these recipes are going to allow you to craft some BOE items sharing the appearance of these old vanilla Naxxramas items. So the crafted items themselves are going to be bind and equip, so if you're a crafter, you'll actually be able to make a ton of gold by crafting and selling these items for the transmog. But if you're somebody that doesn't have professions based around this, or you don't want to go do the farm to actually get these recipes, these items are going to take a bunch of old world materials. So for instance, this shield right here is going to take Arcanite bars, pristine black diamonds, enchanted leather, and essence of undeath. A bunch of resources you can pretty easily go farm in some of the vanilla zones and dungeons. And the main way you're going to go about making gold from these items is looking at the recipes of a lot of the items that are going to be more sought after, or looking at a bunch of the items from the same profession and seeing if there are any resources that these items have in common. For instance, I think this Blade of Unholy Might is probably going to be one of the more sought after items from these different recipes. So you can just go look at its recipe and see it takes Arcanite bars, golden pearls, and essence of undeath. All of these are going to be items that you can go farm quite a lot of since they're old world items. And then once this patch is released, you'll be able to sell them at a massively inflated price. And then some of these items are going to be shared between a lot of the blacksmithing items. So say Arcanite bars, a lot of these blacksmithing recipes are all going to be taking these. That's a really good item to farm because there's going to be a high quantity of these items being sold. And I'll have this Wowhead article linked in the description. You can go check this whole list and check out all the different recipes if you want to go check out some specific items to farm. But this is only the first part of how you can make gold with these new additions to Naxxramas, because it also seems like there's going to be a way to obtain tier 3 transmog items with these new additions to Naxx. And if you've never heard of these were the tier sets in the original Naxx in vanilla, which were only available up until the launch of Wrath of the Lich King, because in Wrath they reused Naxx and there was new tier sets with that 80 version. So all of these original tier sets were no longer available until the black market auction house was released. You could obtain these items one piece at a time, and they usually would sell for millions of gold each. So for the vast majority of the player base, these are basically unobtainable until this upcoming patch. And just a small disclaimer with this, even though we have a decent bit of information, a lot of this was encrypted on the PTR, so we don't know exactly how all of this is going to work, but with how much information is here and how much work was seemingly put into this, it's pretty much a guarantee that this is going to be with these new activities in Naxx. And from looking at all this information, essentially how this is going to work is these professions are going to be able to obtain these new patterns that will allow you to craft these new items that will repair these lamented gear pieces. And these lamented gear pieces seem to be drops in Naxxramas once the patch goes live. These also seem to be sellable, so you could potentially make quite a lot of gold from these lamented pieces. And then after you obtain the lamented pieces, you would then craft these these different items that repair the lamented pieces and turn them into these desecrated armor pieces that also have a class requirement. So these cloth ones are priest, mage, warlock, the leather ones are rogue, druid, etc. And these would essentially be the tier pieces, but then you also have to take these desecrated items and purify them with this new cloth and righteous orbs. And then once you purify them, that will give you the tier 3 transmog piece. So there's a lot of steps you have to go through to actually get the tier piece, and I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work for people who aren't the actual crafters. Presumably you would be able to create work orders to either make these different items to purify the lamented pieces, to get the desecrated pieces, then maybe you'd be able to do another work order to purify them. Not exactly sure how that's all going to work for people who aren't the crafters, but when you look at it in terms of making gold, there's a ton of additional gold to be made through these items, because just making the base items that purify these lamented pieces take a bunch of old world resources as well. Essence of Death, Dark Runes, Frozen Runes, which were unobtainable but seem to be a new drop from Naxx as well, and then just a bunch of other resources depending on what profession it's for. And that's just for this one item that's going to purify these lamented items, which are also going to be able to be farmed and sold on the auction house. But then if you go down and look at the purify for these different items, which is the last step in getting your transmog, they're also going to take 10 righteous orbs a piece. So that's going to be 80 righteous orbs for a full set of transmog for any of these tiers. And I think righteous orbs are probably going to be one of the easiest ways to make a ton of gold once it's released, just because you need so many of them and they're relatively easy to farm. You can just go farm them in Stratholme. You go to the human section, kill all the humans, and they all have a chance to drop these righteous orbs. So it's a pretty easy and straightforward farm to do, but a lot of people aren't going to want to do it. So the people who do go farm a ton of these orbs are going to be able to sell them at just ridiculously inflated prices, because people are going to have a lot of gold and they're just going to want to go and buy all the resources they need to get their tier 3 set. They're not going to want to go farm all over the old zones to get the resources they need. So the main strategy to use before the patch is released is to go build up a pretty big stockpile of a bunch of these old world resources: fell cloth, essence of undeath, which seems to be used in almost every single one of these recipes, dark runes, enchanted leather, arcanite bars, all these type of old world resources. Get a good stockpile of them, and especially get a good stockpile of righteous orbs. Then when the patch is released, you can also go start farming Naxx, because it seems you'll be able to sell these lamented armor pieces themselves, which are going to be able to make a lot of gold. And then it seems you'll also be able to farm some other resources within the raid. For example, frozen runes seems to be sellable, and it seems that these are also going to be obtained within Naxx once the patch hits. So there's a bunch of items you'll also be able to go farm the day the patch hits. So whether you're a crafter that wants to go get the recipes and craft the items themselves to sell the items for a ton of gold, or if you're somebody that just wants to go farm all the resources and sell all the resources at a base, you'll be able to make a ridiculous amount of gold doing these farms. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.